Howdy, hackers, and welcome to... No, this is actually not a Fairlight TV episode. Think of this as sort of an expert's guide to watching Fairlight TV. So I've gone through all the old episodes and I've tried to categorize them according to what they are about. And I will now go through them like per area that they are covering. So if you are looking for something specific, there might be a way for you to actually find that better now if I'm giving you this list. But I'm also a bit annoyed because I did a 45-minute recording and then I realized that my microphone was not recording properly. But it is now recording, so this is what you will actually see. I have a number of episodes that cover sort of generic things. It's platform independent. Episode number 4 is about compression. So how to represent data in a smaller footprint, smaller digital footprint, I guess you can say. And episode 5 is more specifically on how to do it on the C64, sorry. Episode 5, C64. Episode number 28 around preservation. So given that the magnetic media that we use to store things on is deteriorating, I'd say rapidly, but it is deteriorating to some extent. It's also deteriorating to the extent where we can no longer read the stuff. But we should do what we can to preserve all the data that is out there to ensure that we don't miss anything that was actually produced during the active period. And this is about C64 Amiga, and you can also use the same techniques and the same programs for all the other formats, basically. So preserving tapes and discs, episode 28. One of the really watched episode is episode number 32. That's general development in assembler. If you are interested in starting coding on the C64 or the Amiga, it might be a good idea to see this episode first. It's a general approach to assembly language, and it's also kind of covering both the C64 and the Amiga. But don't expect that you would know how to code assembler after this. It's sort of a crash course to allow you to take the next step with a deeper understanding of how it generally works. Interviews, some of them are very specific to a specific platform, but I've compiled a list of the interviews I have done over the years. Originally, I did them, they tended to be rather long, so I split them in a kind of episode number 1 and episode number 2, so both episodes would be kind of reasonable in length. But I realized that most people just watch the first episode and then the second episode gets missed. And sometimes the really juicy parts are actually in the latter of the episodes. So nowadays, I'm just giving you all of it in one go. Even if it's a long one, I leave it up to you to find whatever you want inside the episodes. So episode 26 and episode 27, that's the interview with Galahad of Fairlight and Scoopex. Phil, and if you're following the Amiga side of what we are doing, you would see that Phil is involved in most of that because he's a super nice and also a very competent Amiga guy. 35 and 36, the Sarge, so graphics predominantly for the C64. A number of people watch episode 35 where we are describing the background and all the all aspects of the scene activities of Joachim. But people didn't really watch episode 36, and that is really annoying because that is where he's showing how he's doing when he's drawing, the tools he's been using, the modus operandi of his drawing. So do watch episode 36. It's a good one. Chaos Engineer 38 and 39, again, still that segment of 1 and 2. Most of you watch only the first one and not so many watch the second one. Again, they are equally good. To be honest, I basically think I should do another one because he's been doing so many additional things. His Albert editor that he did together with the Sarge. That's not been covered yet, and probably it should. So yeah, well, there might be a third episode with the Chaos Engineer of Hokuto Force. 41 and 42, Black Shadow of Fairlight. This is an insight in the very early scene history. Christian was there in West Coast Crackers, and he was in the very early days of the C64, the very early days of the Amiga, and he's one of the founding fathers of Fairlight as a group. This is surely something you should watch if you are at least a slightly tiny bit interested in the early scene history. 46 is Trap and Walt. Oh, I should correct my own typos here. Trap and Walt of Bonzai. Super nice guy and very, very competent coders, being responsible for a number of the really competent and competitive demos on the C64 platform in the recent years. 48, if you're into YouTube, which I'm assuming you are because you're watching this, then retro recipes might be something you follow on YouTube as well. So if you are interested in retro and YouTube, retro recipes is probably one of the things you are following. And Perifractic, Christian Simpson doing retro recipes, was interviewed in episode 48. Also something you really should watch. 49, anybody interested in the PC should watch this. Smash, Matt from Fairlight, is interviewed here, and he's describing the demo processing and his history, and also we are covering the super interesting part of Notch, the tool that he has been doing originally together with Pantaloon, and that is the engine that runs behind most of the leading acts. So if you're buying tickets and go to the stadium selling solutions or the stadium selling acts, you would probably see an instance of Notch generating the visuals in the background behind the leading artist, the Taylor Swift, the Pink, I shouldn't name more because I'm not actually sure that these are the correct ones, but think of it like 8 of the 10 leading acts are running Notch as the visual engine in the background. 54 and 55, Louie, so Fairlight, and also the Black Lotus. Another typo, I actually typed Fairlight wrong, that's embarrassing. 57, Scooby of Genesis Project. I tend to still say Scooby of Light. He's also the author of Assembly 64, so that's also one of the tools that we cover in that episode. So if you're interested in Assembly 64, you should watch it just because you want to see that, but then you also get the interview with Fredrik as well. And now 2 of the most watched episodes as well. So LFT, Linus Åkesson of Kryo. This guy that has been converting C64s into musical instrument. He's done his own assembler, his own music program, his own graphics program. He has his own loading engine, the spindle that generates a demo project from the file you feed it with. A one-man army, and a number of you have been really interested in watching that one for sure. And but if you missed it, do watch it. It is episode 59. Episode 60 is Bagder of Horizon. Daniel Stenberg is also the author of Curl, and anybody who has been a kind of a professional of the computer industry, working with backend stuff, doing downloads or scripted downloads from any project you're doing, you have been working with Curl because it is the tool for the purpose. And Daniel is the guy responsible for that. So there is also a discussion here on how you approach having an install base over 1 billion instances. So if you've done software that runs in over 1 billion entities, then you can brick all the Mercedes-Benzes or Linux distributions just by pushing out something that is totally erroneous. if you're into software development as a professional software development, you should watch it just because of that. So there are many aspects why you should watch that episode 60. Episode 62 is with Pantaloon, Magnus, main coder of Fairlight PC for a number of years, and then main coder for Fairlight T64. Again, and also his gaming industry experiences that he had in parallel to those activities. 68, Mahoney, one of the most competent C64 guys around. He was the one doing the kind of the major parts that actually caught on in the winning demo next level from Last X, the 100 levels of games. But he's also the guy that worked together with Cactus doing Noise Tracker, one of the really leading musical programs on the Amiga. So and he did a number of demos on the 64, but he also did a number of demos on the Amiga back in the day. So yeah, you do watch that one. It's a really long one, but worth it. If you are watching news and there has been a hacker attack and somebody has been leaking data, and the news media in Sweden would need to talk to somebody who is an expert in the area, there is a high degree of probability that they will call David Jacoby. David, beside being a very good friend of mine, he is also a very BBS nerdy person. So he is doing BBS. He has a basement full of machines that run BBSs on the native hardware for a number of platforms. So if you want to call a C64 BBS, an Amiga BBS, an Atari BBS, or an Macintosh, early Macintosh 68000 based the Macintosh BBS, you could be sure that David has one of those in his basement. That's also one of the episodes I did once, and where the actual recording was actually shite, and we had to re-record it. So yeah, so that's how it is recording stuff for you guys. But yeah, I think it turned out really good, and probably it's sometimes good if you have a failed attempt before you actually do the real thing. 77 is also going back to the roots of the C64 scene and also the roots of the Amiga scene. Per Håkan Sundell, PHS of Computerbrains Cracking Service, is giving his views and shares his memory of the very early C64 and very early Amiga days. And also there is a bit of a talk on his CCS64 emulator on the PC. 78A, it's not done by me, I just recorded it. That is the interview of Rob Hubbard. Flex interviewed Rob Hubbard on X 2023, and this is my recording of it. 95 is the recording, or is my interview with Trident, so Adam. The first half is just sort of the interview, and the second half is going through the demo The Ghost, and we will get back to that when we talk about the kind of demo analysis. 31 is going through a number of books, so we're now in the segment of books. 31 goes through a number of books. If you are interested in books covering the scene or graphics or yeah, a number of aspects, not normal kind of programming manuals, because there are loads of those, but a number of books that you might be interested in and those have been produced during the last few number of years, I would say. There was an episode called 53 that was also named Odds and Sods because it contained, the content wasn't really consistent. So, but the first half is covering a number of new books there. So do watch that one for a number of new books there. Clothing. So episode 33 is probably the oddest one. I'm going through my scene gear. So I dug through my wardrobe, picking out most of the stuff that had scene logos and stuff on it, and I'm showing you my wardrobe, basically the scene flavored part of my wardrobe. All right, legislation and law. Episode 34 is a brief introduction to copyright, because I'm actually a lawyer by education, and I actually wrote my master thesis on copyright. I know it's changed a lot since I wrote that, so don't call me an expert anymore, but I'm giving you the history and what it's sort of covering today, and it's also a bit of an insight of how I feel of copyright, if it's productive or not. I shouldn't say it's a follow-up, but there is another episode called 94, which is around if piracy was a menace to society or it has actually benefited society. So I'm exploring how piracy actually kind of affected the computer industry. Do watch that one. It might be more of a political one, but your choice. That's episode 94. Okay, so scene, the sort of social context of nerds interacting with one another. Is there one scene where everybody's interacting, or is there one per platform? Or however you feel around the concept of the scene. Episode 71 is around scene sociology. What roles are needed in a group, and looking across platforms, and also what was needed back then and what is sort of needed now. A number of new roles sort of emerged that has a logical place in any multifunctional group, but a number of roles sort of faded and are not really relevant. I mean, modem traders or mega swappers. We don't really need people who are copying the content of one disk into 100 disks, putting every one of them in an envelope and sending them by a post to everyone and his grandmother. But looking at the roles and how they've grown or faded over the years. That's episode 71, and I needed a second source on my own views there, so I invited David Almer Hedning for that, and thanks, great contribution there by David, I would say. 74 is about organizing copy parties. There is David in that one as well, but he's not the only one. You have the organizers of other parties, so Edison Party and Datastorm. I think they are the three ones. So 94, the organizers behind three of the leading Swedish parties discussing organizing parties. And more on the scene wars. There is a classical war between Genesis Project and Fairlight, following that Genesis Project released the game Rubicon, coded by Gollum and with graphics of the Sarge. And this is sort of a make peace little episode thing here. At X 2023, Sarge met Tiger and met the two guys from Genesis Project, and they sort of kissed and made up. So that is a very cute little episode where they shake hands and agree and do talk about the entire thing of what happened and what didn't happen at that time. Okay, episode 93 is managing a group. I'm giving you my sort of ideas on how to manage a scene group, and also talk about membership and who is a member and who is not a member, and could you be a member of multiple groups and all of that. That might not be it for everybody. It's a bit of a nerd, where if you're interested in computers, it's one thing, but if you're interested in sort of the scene sociology, managing groups, then that could be something for you. Probably not everybody's taste. More an acquired taste for that one, I guess. The probably broadest episodes we've had was about general graphics or logos on all platforms. I'm having first of all an interview with Stranger of Hemorrhoids, which is basically predominantly an Atari ST group. But Stranger goes through 50 of his favorite logos across all the platforms, across all the formats. There is Petsky on the 64, there is ANSI, there is Atari ST, there is Atari XL, there is C64, there is Amiga, Amiga AGA, and there is PC, and yeah, I don't know if I've forgotten something, but probably I did. This is an expose of a great number of graphical pieces across like everything. A great selection as well, I must say. So do watch that one. It's a long one, but hopefully you will find that it's worth it. I've also been to a number of parties. I've been to the Fairlight 35-year birthday cruise, and that one is episode number 44. The second part of that is a talk between Celebrandil and Smash on how to code demos. And they are having a really interesting discussion. So if you at one point in time thought that you would like to be that little fly on the wall to listen in when two people are talking about a super interesting topic, then this could be one. You could be the little fly on the wall that listen to when they are talking about demo making. 51 area, that's not area 51, that's episode 51, Gubdata 2022. Then episode 53 is a bit more over Gubdata 2022. And there is also a background and a recording of my own release for Gubdata 2022. Yeah, I'm not saying that's the masterpiece of that demo party, but it was released there. So anyway, 67 Fjelldata 2023. Yeah, I don't need to say more than that, but it's a great party, and it's the very north of Sweden around Östersund, actually at the island of Frösön, but 2023, really epic arrangement there, and you would see the details in that episode 67. 78B, these are the concerts from X 2023, whereas episode 79 is the actual X 2023 episode. I should possibly mention them in the other order, even if they're numerically sort of weird, where the main episode is sort of released after the little segments. You might remember the 78A interview with Rob Hubbard, and that was also 78A, right? And here the concerts are 78B because they're sort of associated. They are all episodes picked and recorded from X. I didn't add anything, but just doing the recordings. Sorry. 82 Pågadata 2023 in Kvidinge. 89 is Mysdata 2023 in Karlskrona, also in Sweden. And 91 is Fjelldata 2024. So that's a rather recent one. The most recent Fjelldata in Frösön near Östersund. Okay, hardware. I've done a few things that are sort of hardware specific. 76 is around modems. I worked in the telco industry, so I guess I could say I know more than most around data over telephone lines. Also, not only at the customer interface, but how it actually works inside the network, both on fixed networks and also mobile networks. So modems, technology around modems, 76 is the episode there. And then 85, my original C64, the one I got in 87, I guess. Was it 80? No, 86. Yeah. Well, in the mid 80s. That's the original machine, and I've done a number of manipulations on it. I've added a number of features, switches and LEDs and stuff like that. And I was selling that because moving out of a house meant that I had very little basement storage. So why not sell the stuff that was in my basement I didn't feel I needed to have? My attachment to things is rather weak, so I rather have somebody who really cared about the thing, owning it. So going through that machine, 85 is that episode. More specifically on the specific platforms here. So episode 32 is, we're now into Amiga, and the first section on that is coding. So coding in assembler, episode 32. This is assembler for noobs, and it's not going to teach you how to actually code assembler. It's giving you the mindset and the sort of understanding of what assembler is and how it works. Then you need to do loads of studies, and you would need to do loads of experiments on your own. But it's still a good thing if you've seen this episode before and have gotten a bit of the learnings around how to think when coding machine code or assembler, because this would teach you that. It is both for C64 and Amiga because the principles apply equally. It would also apply to any other assembler, but since I'm also showing a number of books, these are only applicable for the C64 and the Amiga. So that's why I'm saying this is mainly applicable for C64 and Amiga. And then I had Photon of Scoopex helping me showing his favorite demos. So we had an episode 69, which is the original chipset demos. So 10 of his favorite OCS demos. And then episode 73 was the AGA, so the advanced graphics architecture, the improved graphics capability that came with the A1200. So and his 10 demos, that they actually were 11, so he counted them wrong. But so his favorite 11 AGA demos is in episode 73. All right. Episode 97, which is released as I'm recording this, and episode 98, which isn't recorded, which isn't published when I'm recording this. They are Galahad cracking Speedball 2. There is both an episode 98 and also a 98B. I make a note of that so I don't forget it. So this is Galahad cracking Speedball 2. The first section is up until a point where everything looks like it should be done, but it fails. So I'm giving you a cliffhanger there to see if that could force you to actually watch an episode number 2. So 98 is after he fixed the error and how he implemented the rest of the stuff. And then there is that separate segment where he's basically bug searching. So that little segment went out to be a separate episode. You only need to watch 98 and 97 and 98. But it's a good thing to learn how to find errors in your own productions by watching that little extra segment. Yeah, that is actually all there is for Amiga. And there is a lot for the C64 though. And we're starting with C64, more like system stuff now. 02, a very early episode, is device storage. That's a general storage episode. Episode 50 is around C64 disk drives, how they work, and a bit like that. Episode 11, C64 memory map. How could it be that the C64 has a CPU that can only address 64K of memory, and it has 64K of RAM, but it also has ROM and I/O, and it's technically not possible to have like both RAM and ROM at the same location, but this is possible, and the C64 is a machine where you have them in parallel. How that works and how it's structured is in episode 11. Episode 12 about C64 cartridges, utility cartridges, which one you should have and which one could do what, and a number of other things around cartridges. 13 is around the C64 keyboard, how to program the C64 keyboard. And then episode 88 is also around the C64 key matrix, so it's also around keyboards. I might have done basically the same episode twice. That might be a bit embarrassing. do watch both and compare them and see which one you find is the better one. So on bigger machines you have ASCII or ANSI, but ANSI is sort of the ASCII plus the number of control characters, and there is ANSI art on the PC and also on the Amiga, but on the C64 you have PETSCII, which is sort of the same, but it's the C64 sort of variant of ANSI. And that is covered in episode number 15. 37, that's the first section of that is basic coding, and the second one is around C64 file format. So that episode has sort of two topics, and you shouldn't really have that. I realize that now, but this was before I've done my first 50 episodes, so I was still kind of searching my way. Sorry for having two topics in one episode there. One of the more watched episodes is episode number 6. It's setting up a C64 development environment. 32, assembler programming. I missed that. So episode 32, I referenced that before on the Amiga. So getting to understand how assembly languages work and implementing that on their the platform you are interested in coding on. This is valid for both C64 and Amiga, and so you could watch episode 32 regardless if you're into coding Amiga or the C64. 58 is kind of beginner's guide to assembler programming on the C64. This is getting to the point where you're actually setting up the environment, coding stuff on the C64, generating relevant output. That's from A to Z for coding on the C64 in assembler. Episode 58. I guess that is the most watched episode in this area. So 64 and 65, a number of the things you might want to code if you're into the 64 would be graphic stuff. So then you would need to understand the VIC, the video interface chip here. And 64 and 65 introduces you to the VIC, how it works, and also a number of the tricks you can do with it to make it do more than it was actually intended to be able to do. So VIC tricks. Episode 80 is around stable rasters. It's not stable raster bars, it's stable rasters. So because the machine is drawing like this, and a number of the VIC tricks are depending on the fact that you write to a specific register or possibly even a specific bit inside the register at a specific cycle. So for that you need to be able to address a specific cycle, and that is a bit tricky, but it's explained here how you do it, and 3 different techniques I think are explored here. Which one you choose is of course up to you, depends on your ambition on the 64, but it's there. Episode 80. Episode 81 is recording from Data 2023. So this guy is coding C on the 64. He did his own C compiler. I mean, it's not a full C compiler, but it's a quite full C compiler, and he's explaining how he's done that. So that's for coding C on the 64. 92 is Trident's talk from Data 2023. I guess. Yeah, it would have to be that. Oh, yeah, well. No, 2024. Yes, it's Trident's talk from Data 2024. He's talking about demo techniques and a number of other really cool topics. So that would be episode 92. And as I've already mentioned that there is an interview with Trident in episode 95, and the second part of that interview is The Ghost, the demo that was released by Fairlight and Genesis Project on Data 2024. And Adam here helps me going through all the gory details and all the tricks of all the parts. So if you would like to kind of learn the craft of coding demos on the C64, these are invaluable videos for you to watch, because you're kind of seeing the tricks, how they are done, and what the thoughts were behind them. Okay, more C64 hacking then. More hacking around in other people's codes than generating your own code. 03 is about IFFL, which is a kind of technique for merging a number of level files into a bigger file to save blocks on the disk, because on the 64, when you compete over the best crack, IFFL was one of the techniques to allow you to produce a crack with fewer blocks, and that is a parameter in the competition on how good a crack is on the 64. You are consuming fewer blocks than somebody else. 07 is about setting up a crack project. I have sort of a skeleton or a template crack project where I'm sort of just copying that, and then I'm populating that with a number of files, and then most of the stuff is then done automatically, implemented in sort of this framework. That speeds up hacking a C64 program drastically. So that is the trick for that. I was also doing a bit of hacking around compiled basic, and for that purpose I was digging into pet speed, which is one of the compilers on the C64. So converting basic code into something which is more like pseudocode that runs into a virtual machine or an engine, so it will run a lot faster than the actual interpreted basic program. And showing a bit of how that is done. Episode 10, reverse engineering of a bootloader. Yeah, that's low-level hacking and a lot of poking around in the Vice machine code monitor for you. Episode 14 and 16 are hacking tape loaders, and that is part 1 and part 2. So again, 2 segments covering the topic of hacking tape loaders. Episode 22 is cracking Star Hawks. That is a program where you have like a core game. That one is then crunched, and then loading pictures or something else is added, and then that is crunched, and so a number of layers or levels of the crunching is done. So if you want to implement like a trainer on the actual game, you need to depack all of them, add the trainer at the inner layer of that onion, and then sort of reconstructing the onion by crunching them, and then adding the new layer outside, and then crunching that, and then adding the other layer. So recreating the onion, peeling the onion and recreating it. 84 is more around tape cracking, and then 84 microload tape tool. So I'm building there a tape transfer routine and showing you that. And as far as I remember, I'm also sharing the source code for anybody who contact me after seeing that video. 87 is about Star Pause tape protection. Star Pause is a super nice game, and but it has this devious tape protection. It sets up a counter, so when you start the game, it is looking for how long the tape play is pressed. And during the normal play of the game, the tape keeps spinning after the game has loaded, and then when it gets to the physical end of the tape, as the tape recorder works, or the tape deck works on the C64, it stops and the play button is sort of released. The game counts how long it takes before that mechanism is triggered, so the play button gets up, and if the value of the timer is not between sort of an accepted interval, it is poking garbage data into the game that will eventually, at the later stage in the game, make the game crash. Devious protection from one of the physical aspects of the original tape of Star Pause. Super interesting. So anybody just kind of making a tape transfer out of Star Pause and implementing and just packing it together without watching would have failed this test, because then the timer would be 0. It would never have started, and that's one of the cases where it fails. Or if you take a tape, that original tape, and copy it to a longer tape, then the tape wouldn't kind of eject the play button until much later, and then the value would be so much bigger, and then it would fail because of that. Devious protection, and I'm going through that, and I'm also looking through all the different versions on CSDB to see if they were able to detect it. And what I also found out was that the only person who actually cracked that protection was Mr. Z, Sultan. And I realized that that little patch that he did, a number of people have stolen that little patch and implemented it, but he watermarked it by saying Mr. Z, but only in reverse. So they took his, including the white, the watermarked, and patch it into their own cracks. Ooh, really bad not being able to do it yourself. So yeah, that's also a bit of a scene history and a bit of a scene drama in that one. 56 is about cracking cartridges on the C64. 17 is about defreezing game. There are originals, but also kind of cracks where you would see that there is a freeze. Somebody used to freeze a cartridge, just press the button, and the entire memory was packed together and saved to the disk. That's really, really ugly. But if you take games like the Exploding Fist on the C64, it is actually like that in the original. So if you buy the game, it is a freeze that is loaded. Freeze of the export cartridge. And if I release something like the Exploding Fist, I really wouldn't want it to be frozen because it looks a bit garbage in the beginning. So I really would like to open it up, clean it, and then pack it together again. So again, that's defreezing for you. 18, if you want to add a trainer to your game, the episode 18 might be the episode that you want to watch, because I'm showing you kind of my techniques and how I do a number of the trainers I am doing. 43, in search of recrackers. The interview with Black Shadow in episode 41 and 42 also reference Swedish Cracking Crew recracking a number or 2 specific games from West Coast crackers. And I'm here exploring if there is any truth in the allegation that Swedish Cracking Crew was doing recracks at the time. And I can tell you, yes, they did. That is the conclusion. But so this is a bit of a forensic episode where I'm comparing stuff. There is a bit of a relation to the Star Pause tape protection where people are actually stealing Zoltan's little crack patch. But yeah, do watch both the Star Pause tape protection thing, 87, and also the search for recrackers in 43. One of the most complex protection mechanisms on the C64 is Pirate Slayer Boot. That was on the Electronic Arts games, you know, the Bard's Tales and those. This is going through how that one worked and also how to hack it. Episode 45. Episode 52 is going through my own personal favorite cracks of the ones I've done myself. Not where the game is my favorite, but where I think I've been walking the extra mile to make my cracks stand out against all others. Episode 17 is around Zelia. So I took the game Arnie and I made, TNG made new graphics for the intro of it, and then we also had Vodka doing a bit of loading pictures, and so we generated something which was sort of a crack of Arnie, mildly changed into a bit of an extra thing, and then released to show our support for Ukraine after the horrendously distressing aggression from Russia. So yeah, we do support Ukraine, and this is our a little lame initiative to actually kind of show that. This is a video where the demographics of who watches the video is quite different from all the others, I would say, because this was linked from another kind of a number of pro-Ukrainian Reddit subreddits. Okay, 47, Advanced Art Studio is a graphics program on the C64. I've done a reassembly of it, and this is showing a bit of that. And I'm also pretty sure I can share the reassembly if you're interested in having that. Just let me know and you can have it. But yeah, do watch that episode first. 75 is a reassembly of the action replay. So one of the most complex pieces of code on the platform is the action replay. It's absolutely weird, but super competent. And reassembling it into something that would compile or assemble back to like an original that you can actually, where you can also patch it to and move code around in it, is not necessarily very easy. And I've done an attempt and it's not done yet, but I've taken it a number of steps, and I've also removed a few things from the action replay that I don't really need, just to make sure that it actually kind of works, my reassembly works. And again, it doesn't fully work, but at least yeah, it's quite competent, and I can do it as I can use it as my daily drivers. But I haven't implemented the thing that I'm actually aiming to implement. I'm aiming to implement so it could coexist with the RAM expansion unit, like the retro replay. But the retro replay annoys me because they've removed a number of features that I really think should be there. Okay, 86 is a run-through of dumpdiff, which is a tool I've coded myself on the PC. And so if I have something which doesn't work for some reason, but I cannot identify the differences why it wouldn't work, I can use dumpdiff as a feature or a kind of a function where I could detect what was changed that might be causing the issue for me. Yeah, watch the video. That explanation wasn't very good, but do watch the video. And also, if you watch this one and you would like to get access to the tool, then let me know, because I think I'm also telling you where that tool is located in case you want it. Okay, a number of C64 tools I've sort of reviewed. 08, the episode 8 is the C64 debugger, the tool that is now retro debugger, but that was called C64 debugger at the time, so 08. Regenerator is in episode 19, so that's a reassembler. That was the reassembler I was using at the time, I think. And episode 20 is 6502 bench. That is the reassembler I'm using today. And then 21 is JC64, an Italian reassembler, rather targeted against reassembly of music routines. But that's also ongoing, and it has undergone a number of iterations since that. But yeah, so that's that one. I did a very deep dive into the Vice monitor. So episode 23, 24, and 25 are sort of the expert's guide to using the machine code monitor in Vice. As you can see, there is no specific review of Vice. That is assumed that you already know. But if you want to use the machine code monitor as an expert, do watch 23, 24, and 25. Dearmaster, yeah, by Style, the guys in Style has produced the absolutely dominant tool for managing every aspect of the C64 format. A file editor, a disk editor, yeah, it can do most of the things with the D64 and the tap files and the G64s and all of the other formats. Dearmaster is covered in episode 61. Super great tool, and I'd say a rather handy episode as well. In episode 90, that was something I did just before Christmas because I'm wearing a Christmas hat. I'm going through a number of releases, a number of pieces of software that were just new at the time. Bleep load transfer by Fungus, Tapex by SLC, Nova 64 also by SLC, and then a new version of the C64 debugger or retro debugger. Yeah, so possibly something that was relevant at the time, and a number of those might still be relevant, but it's quite difficult to find them unless you're really looking for them. But do watch that if you're interested in tape transfer, bleep load tape transfer, or Tapex, the tape transfer tool. Nova 64 is the front end to taps. And C64 debugger is, the debugger, one of the debuggers for the C64. It is actually like the Vice emulator, but you are getting all the visual aspects. You can see what's happening inside the machine when you're running the emulator in ways which you cannot on Vice itself. Okay, C64 software, the last piece here. Alternate Reality episode 01. We are going through the Fairlight crack of Alternate Reality together with Jason Compton, who was the one that suggested me to do it, and he was also very inspirational in the process and also helped a lot with the beta testing of the release. Together with T-Rex, we also did a version for cartridge, and that one is covered on episode 63. Episode 30, it's a bit of a shame that I'm mentioning it this early, but the classic legendary Fairlight intro, I should, I don't have that here. The one with the green bar and the red, pink and white logo where the logo circulates. The history around that and a bit of the code and an interview with Dave Hanlon, who did the music, that is in episode 30. And then lastly, episode 40 is an episode where I cover my favorite demos. I'm picking a few of the really, really good old demos that I absolutely love. I remember them from when they came out, and they've been with me ever since. The Judges Think Twice, the panoramic design metallic, whichever is it more. And I guess I'm also showing Escos there. I don't really remember more than that. But so this is, let's say, a brief summary of 3 years of Fairlight TV. Having watched this and having the list down below, you should be able to retrieve or get access to a number of the episodes that you might have missed before, but now have an opportunity to catch up. And if the list and what you hear on the video does not match, that probably means that I've updated the list, so the list is more current than the video content. There is this Escos episode. Where was that? Have I missed that? I need to look through the list of the episodes again and see where that one was covered. But now stop this video and go watch the real episodes of Fairlight TV. Bye bye.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Fairlight.